Coming up on today's show, George Goulburn, hailing out of Australia, is a mature, straight male escort who left the corporate life behind a few years ago to enter this line of work of being a sex worker. He swapped the boardroom for the bedroom. Welcome to Loving Without Boundaries, where we hear inspiring stories, share actionable advice, and talk about the challenges and the joys of ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. I'm your host, Kitty Chambliss. Coming up, my conversation with George Goulburn. Welcome back to Loving Without Boundaries, where I am really excited to have what I think is going to be a fascinating conversation with Mr. George Goulburn, who I've already been having a wonderful dialogue with before we started recording. George, thank you for seeking my podcast out, for being a listener, and for reaching out so that we can have a really interesting conversation today.
Thank you so much, Kitty. I'm delighted. I'm excited to have a conversation with you and to talk to your listeners.
That's excellent. So I would love it if, George, you would tell our listeners a little bit about yourself in your own words.
I certainly will, and thank you. So I live in Australia. I live in Sydney, Australia, where part of what I do is I'm a sex worker. I'm a straight male escort. And that's only part of who I am and what I do. But I have been involved in ethical non-monogamy for around about 12 years now. And my journey, which I'm sure we'll talk about through the course of the conversation, Kitty, has led me to this work. But I'm 53 years old. I worked in the corporate sector for around 30 years and have been ethically non-monogamous for around about 12 years now. Mm-hmm. After various types of relationship styles. And in the last 2 years, I've moved into this work as a male escort. So I've got a really unique and fascinating story to tell, I suppose, in terms of relationship styles and what I observe and what I see.
Mm-hmm. That's really exciting. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll have some interesting overlaps maybe in our stories and also divergences. So I'm really appreciative that you reached out, because our podcast here at Loving Without Boundaries, it's all about normalizing the conversation, being very sex positive, and also getting rid of shame around our sexuality, or if we've been former cheaters, such as me. I was a former cheater for many, many years. So I really appreciate you reaching out so that we can tell your story. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, especially, and I'm also in my 50s. I'm 56, and I've been doing this podcast now for a decade. So that means I was about 46 when I started. So I kind of came upon my journey a little later in life in some ways, similar to you. But I want to hear about your story. So what would you say? I love to ask this light bulb moment question, whether, and it doesn't matter if it was when you were really young as a child or in your 20s or maybe as a grown adult, like, was there one or more moments when you realized that you were maybe a little bit different from the average person walking down the street, or maybe traditional monogamy just wasn't really your jam? I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story there.
I certainly do, Kitty, and I've followed your podcast. I've learned and read a bit about you, and in some ways we have similar paths. I grew up in a Catholic school scenario. Mm-hmm. My parents were happily married for 60 years, monogamously. And
did you say 60?
60, yes.
Oh, wow.
My father passed away a few years ago, but Mum and Dad were they were married as virgins, and
wow.
That was the only narrative that I had. So that became the script for what my life was meant to be. So I met my now ex-wife when we were about 21, and we did the traditional thing. We got married, had a child, and we separated though when we were about 30. So it was about 10 years. And I knew nothing beyond monogamy because
Hmm.
there was no other narrative. There was no other story. And that was quite profound, particularly for my parents. They sort of wondered why I was giving away this entire thing because of what they considered an argument. So I had to really unpack that for them because it was more than an argument. It was just, look, we separated very amicably, and it was really beautiful, and we just drifted apart. And and for want of a better word, she became a lesbian after that relationship. And but
Wow.
we remained the very best of friends. So it was we were terrific co-parents. Um, I then moved into shortly thereafter. I moved into a relationship with another woman, and that relationship went for about 11 years. And throughout that relationship, I cheated. So back to
Mm,
what you were saying about your past,
right.
I was a serial cheater in that time. And I'm not proud of it, but it's what I did. And there would be years go by in those 11 years where I didn't cheat. But then when opportunity arose, for whatever reason, I would. And so to back to your original question of the light bulb moment, it was towards the end of that that I thought, there's got to be a better way. I've done
Mm,
monogamy. I've done cheating. Neither of those work for me. So there must be something different or better. And so it was about 12 years ago when that last long-term relationship ended that I was befuddled, for want of a better
befuddled. What a
word.
great word. Yeah.
Yes. And I was
Hmm.
like, man, I can't do either monogamy or cheating.
Hmm.
So there's got to be something else. And that's where my journey really began.
Hmm. So that, if I'm tracking with you, that was about 41 or so.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Hmm.
you're good with numbers.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
I'm taking notes too, so it helps. But I appreciate you saying that because I normally don't think I'm good with numbers. No, that's very interesting because it definitely aligns with my story, just slightly differently in terms of order, in the sense of I was cheating in my 20s. And I didn't get married until after I discovered some form of consensual non-monogamy. And but we had similar experiences where we realized that monogamy wasn't working, cheating wasn't working. There's got to be a better way. I had that epiphany somewhere around 32, but I still hadn't figured it out yet, you know? So it's just interesting to hear other people's journeys and where you were at. One question I have, if you're willing to answer, is when that second relationship where you were cheating ended, did your partner find out that you were cheating, or how did that end, if I may ask?
She certainly did. And to backtrack a tad, Kitty, she discovered early on, like when we met, when we were around about 30 or so, the I'd come out of say a 9, 10 year marriage, monogamous, and then I had about 6 to 9 months of being single. And I reckon I suggest that I'm making up for lost time in those few months. So it took me a while to get my mojo back. And
Mm-hmm.
then as a 30-year-old man, I found women wanted to, they were attracted to me. I was having sex. And I was like, wow, I'm sort of making up for lost time a bit. And then I met the woman who would be my future, long-term partner. And it was possibly about a year into that I cheated for the first time, and she found out.
Oh wow, right
And
away. Okay.
yeah, and she said to me, look, I've cheated with every person I've ever been with,
Mm.
so it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sticks in my mind because it was almost like a permission. It was almost like, you know, it's okay. Um, it wasn't really. That was just my narrative. It was
Mm.
my way of telling my younger self, now I look back on it, that, hey, you can do this, and she will be okay. But it was not okay.
So it wasn't, it almost sounds like it was don't ask, don't tell, since she knew, but you're saying it didn't maybe feel like it was above board.
It was not above board
Oh,
at
okay.
all. And it was me being a real dick. It was me not honoring the relationship.
Hmm.
And, we were together 11 years and we had two kids. And there were
Oh, wow.
years, there were years where I would be monogamous. But because I traveled so much, there was so much opportunity for me to hook up with other women. And at certain times I did. And but back to your question, it ended ultimately when she discovered finally on my laptop that I'd been on a dating site and communicating with tons of women, and that was the last straw. And she's like, "Look, that's it. We're done."
Wow. Okay. And then you kind of had a talk with yourself, it sounds like, and just realized there's got to be another way. So I'm curious, how did you discover, however you describe it, whether it's consensual non-monogamy versus cheating or polyamory? Like, what was that discovery process like for you?
What it was to begin with, it was a relief. I was glad to be finally found out and finally exposed.
Mm,
And I don't want to take away from what I did, which was destroying trust in that relationship, because that's a really shitty thing to do.
hmm.
But what I was able to acknowledge is that I can find alternative ways of going about relating. And that is what led me into ethical non-monogamy. It's like, okay, I've done monogamy, I've done cheating. There's got to be something different. And that's where I sort of lent into this stuff. And that's where I really started this journey here, Kitty. It's like, don't do either of those things. Find something different. And then it started. Then this story that I'm telling you now
Yeah.
began.
Wow. And so did you come to that conclusion on your own and kind of discover that on your own, or did you talk to different people who were practicing consensual non-monogamy or read a book? Like how did that come about?
It started by myself to begin
Mm,
with. And then, like, I don't know, like many people, I'm not sure if that's correct, but then my mind opened up to it. And then all of a sudden the floodgates opened and the books came in, like The Ethical Slut, The More Than Two, and all of those things happened to then just be in my radar.
okay.
And it's like, okay, because I was so open to an alternative, and I didn't want to do the bad stuff again. It's like, fuck that. It's so important for me ethically and authentically. Oh, yeah.
I know what you mean.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm
That's a hard word to
stepping
say.
over that word. I'm sorry. But yeah, to really honor the person I am. And that all those books, the podcasts, listening to Dean Savage and Esther Perel, and all of those things just opened my mind to there's got to be a better way of treating lovers exceptionally well, and not be an asshole.
Mhm. Well said. I appreciate that. And I came to those very same conclusions just at a slightly different time in my life, but not too far off from you. So that's really interesting. So now you've had this epiphany, you've kind of gotten more clear about how you wanted to show up in your relationships. I'm curious, what were some of the initial either challenges that you experienced and how you overcame them, or also the joys that you experienced and how you leaned into those?
One of the first things, Kitty, is the first relationship I had outside of those long-term relationships was with a woman, and we fell quite deeply in love. But she wanted a don't ask, don't tell connection. And having been a cheater for such a long time, I was not comfortable with that. And I'll tell you why. Because I was working in a different city 3 nights a week, and we would talk every day. And she would say, "Oh, what are you up to tonight?" And the fact of the matter was that I was going on a date or I was hooking up with someone. And because she didn't want to know, I had to say, "Oh, I'm meeting a friend," and that I was not comfortable with that at all because of where I'd been in a cheating response. So that really made it awkward for me, and I had to have the conversation with her to say, "Look, I can't lie. I've done that. We need to change the narrative and work out how can we communicate in a way that is honest in as much as you want to hear, but not too much." And
Mm.
as I'm sure you and your listeners are really aware, there's different levels of honesty and how much you share. So that was a real challenge and an enlightenment of, wow, what do I share and what don't I share?
Yeah. What an interesting journey through your life to see how you were maturing. You were growing and you were learning. Were you able to work that out with that individual that you were dating? Like you did get to a different level of honesty with them?
We did a bit, but ultimately we broke up, and it was because of the poly nature of the relationship.
Ah,
It was, on reflection, she was never probably open enough and ready for that. And we can talk about this a bit more, but I've discovered that in my journey of over a decade that people have their own versions of what they are comfortable with, and she there's a big difference between what you can rationally think that, oh yeah, I can do this, but then what your heart says, what your heart feels, they can be completely different. And that was the case. And sadly, we broke up because the rational brain didn't align with the heartfelt emotions.
mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure you and she probably still learned a lot from that experience. So, and thank you for vulnerably sharing that as well here with us. So now tracking alongside your relationships at this time, you were still in the corporate life. Is that right? Mhm.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, let's start to maybe segue over into around the time that you decided to switch careers. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I certainly will. So, just to give your listeners a bit of perspective, so I was 40 years old when I ended the long term relationship where I cheated. I'm now 53. In those intervening years, I dated extensively, like it was an Olympic sport. I might say, like I
Mhm.
would have up to 10 dates a week.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And look, I'm an extrovert, obviously, and I love meeting women. And I find enough, and I've found online dating to be just a really wonderful thing. I mean, I know most people don't, and so perhaps I'm a bit unusual in that regard. Um, but then 2 years ago, I was working in a corporate job which I'd done for 30 years. I worked in various government and corporate jobs. And I was made redundant from a job that I was doing a couple of years ago. And so for me, that became the light bulb moment, Kitty. It was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And always in the back of my mind had been this idea of being a male escort. And some of the women that I had dated had suggested it to me. But I didn't really think of it as a genuine thing to do. So after being made redundant, I had a bit of I had an overseas trip by myself and just a opportunity to reflect. And then there was some media happening here in Australia around a former escort who was doing a book tour, and he was teaching men over 40 who wanted to enter the industry about how to do it.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was complete serendipity. It sort of landed
Wow.
in my lap, so to speak. And s- a bunch of women that I know sent these articles to me saying, this is your calling.
Wow.
So
How
it
validating.
absolutely perfect timing. So I reached out to this guy, and 2 days later we had a video call. I paid him to help coach me, and he said, "Look, advertise here, charge this much, get these photos." And And that's where it began. And that was 2 years ago. And
So you
it's
literally
just
got
been,
like training on how to kind of switch careers into that.
I did. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Very
Both from
interesting.
a how to do the job, so to speak, as well as from a business perspective, like how to put yourself out there.
What I will say, Kitty, is less about how to do the job, but more about how to put myself out there. And what I mean by that is about 2 months after this guy and I had our initial conversation, we met in person and we had a couple of beers. And he said to me, "Look, you're more experienced and more ready for this work than I ever was in my
Wow.
4.5 years of doing this." And that comes back to my all those years of dating and being very present and um, being really available and aware of what women want. So that was very much a light bulb moment that I've already got this, and his assistance to understand the logistics and the basics of how much do you charge, what do you advertise, all those things was extraordinarily helpful. But I'd done the groundwork.
hmm That's so exciting. What a cool, just general story, very inspiring. And I love the part of the story too about just reinventing yourself. I definitely resonate with that because this is career number two for me that I had no idea I would be doing the work that I'm doing now. And, if you would have told me when I was 20 years old and fresh out of Catholic school that this is what I would be doing. I never would have realized that. And I also love that you did it later in life. There's a friend of mine that had a podcast called The Second Half Comeback. And so I think it's really interesting about just giving yourself the space, if you will, to just reinvent who you are and how you show up in the world and lean into your gifts. And what a cool gift. I'd love to backtrack a moment just because I think it might be interesting for some of our listeners and helpful to them. You said that you're an extrovert and that you were doing 10 dates a week, which just time management wise is astounding. I'm curious if you have any, I'm curious what apps you were on, dating apps, or any words of wisdom for folks out there. I'm newly, by the way, on dating apps myself. I often joke around that I'm a pioneer of online dating because I started in 1996, back when I was monogamous. But I've had a 10-year not on dating apps because I was in two full-time nesting relationships. I just wasn't looking for other partners. And I'm newly on apps myself. I'm just on Hinge at the moment. So just any words of wisdom that might be helpful for our listeners, I'd love to ask you to share.
I certainly will. Look, apps have changed a great deal in the last 10, 15 years. I've evolved through them, as probably most people who have done them for a long time have as well. So I used to be on OkCupid, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and so forth. But there's been quite a mass exodus away from dating apps lately, because for various reasons, particularly for women, because dating apps don't feel safe any longer. And we can talk later about how that has perhaps led to women seeking out professional services like what I offer in my new profession. But I've personally, I find that Field is a very open and inclusive app. It's for people who are perhaps not looking for a long-term relationship. They might be looking for casual fun or non-monogamy. And I'm not here to advertise any apps. That's not, it's not my thing. But look, I've found, for want of a better word, I've found success on dating apps because of my openness and my extroversion, and I'm very, very clear about who I am and what I'm after. And what I know about dating apps is so many people just do it very poorly. They treat it like it's I don't know, just a simplistic thing. They have bad photographs. They just don't put any effort in. And if I'm on a app where it's a swiping, left or right, I'll probably swipe left 99 times out of 100 because people just don't put the energy in. That's like, really, you've got one job. It's like no sunglasses, just no tongue out, no group photographs. Oh, it's like, oh my goodness, really? If you are putting your energy into doing this, just it's not hard. It really is not difficult.
Hmm. I appreciate you sharing that very much. And I'm hoping our listeners are really picking up what you're putting down. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, back when I started, I mean, I was in a monogamous mindset looking for the one, that's a big decision, right? Who we're going to spend the rest of our lives with. And I am very happily married. And so I really do intend to be with my husband for the rest of my life. So I put a lot of intentionality behind it and took it very seriously back at a young age when I was, I would guess I was about 28 years old, maybe no, younger than that, 27 or so when I first started online dating. And I also was in the marketing and advertising industry at the time as a graphic designer and artist. So my thinking was just like direct mail or mass marketing, it's a numbers game. Like I want to get in front of as many people as possible so that I can find my magic person or now persons and put my best foot forward. So by the time I met my husband, I'd been online dating for 7.5 years. My profile was amazing. Like I had a form letter, I had like a whole system. And my running joke you may have heard on another podcast was my now husband, he was online dating for 20 minutes when I wrote him and we met and that was that. And he hasn't been on I don't think he's been on any dating apps since then. But I have in my consensually non-monogamous life. But like you said, I mean, I'm very particular with the pictures and I'm putting my heart out there, and as authentically as I can because I want to attract the best person that matches with me, and I really appreciate what you said that if people are just treating it too casually or not taking it seriously, well, then why should I, no offense, take you seriously, right?
Indeed.
you know? So I really appreciate you saying that. And what I want to add, in case anyone from Field is listening to this podcast episode, I have tried to get Field to work on my iPhone 16 Pro like 8 times. I've deleted the app. I've reinstalled the app. I've emailed you. I've texted you, and no one will fix the darn app to work on my iPhone. So just putting a plea out there for somebody at Field to, no offense, get your act together and figure out why it's not working. Because I've heard great things about Field, but certain people like myself can't get the app to even work. It just keeps giving me an error. So anyway.
It's a very clunky app, and I wish it were better. Like, should do better.
Yeah, do better. Just like we're saying about your profile, like do better, Field. Come on, get the tech issues worked out. Because people, want to use your app. So thanks for sharing that. I think that'll help a lot of people out there. I appreciate just your authenticity. For anybody listening, in case this is helpful, I'm currently on Hinge. When I couldn't get Field to work, I went on ChatGPT and said, I can't get Field to work. If I'm consensually non-monogamous, what do you recommend? And I think it mentioned OkCupid, Hinge, and Bumble. And I decided to check out Hinge. And I've been happy with that app. It doesn't feel so overwhelming. It was pretty easy to set up while I was still being intentional about, say, the photos that I put up there. But just in case that's helpful for anybody out there. So thanks for sharing your guidance, George. I really appreciate that. So I'd love to just understand tell us more about where you're at now. Like, what do you love about the work that you do? What's rewarding about it? What are some of the challenges?
Yeah, and I'd love to. So there's 2 parts to this, I guess, Kitty. So my work, I'll get to that in a moment in terms of my work as a sex worker. But in terms of my relationships, my ethically non-monogamous relationships, and look, I guess we use C&M and E&M interchangeably.
Sure.
So I have a few lovers, and they appreciate and they know what I do for my personal life, and they also know that I've got other lovers. And after all these years of doing non-monogamy ethically, it's been quite the journey, as it is for anyone who will do this. And I'm at what I would consider a very comfortable place now, where I know what's really important to me and I know how to communicate well. And it's like anyone doing this, we always learn. There's no end point where you think, I've mastered it now. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not. And I'm in the happiest place I've ever been insofar as communicating with different lovers that I have. And it's all about integrity and honesty and communication and emotional intelligence. And they're easy words to say, but you need to communicate over and over and over again. And then when you think you've done it, communicate more. When people ask me if this is something they might want to get into, I'm very cautious. I don't give advice. I give suggestions. It's like, oh, yeah, well, and that's perhaps another conversation. But for me, after 12 years of having done this myself, I've come to a real landing of understanding who I am and what works for me. And that's my story. And insofar as my work as a male escort, that's a different level of compartmentalization. Yes, I need to separate those two things from women that I see in my private life to my clientele that I see in my professional life.
That makes a lot of sense to keep those worlds distinct. And that's also just heartwarming, I suppose, to hear that you do have lovers and people that are really important in your life over here while you're also doing your work, your livelihood, your calling. That's amazing. So that all sounds amazing. And I'd love to, I have another question, but I'd love to come back to your work in terms of what excites you about it, what's rewarding about it, and what are maybe some of the challenges being a sex worker.
This is what I really love talking about, Kitty. My passion is the joy that I bring to my clients. It's, as I alluded to earlier, it's been 2 years I've been doing this work, but I feel I've been working up to it for a long time before that. So I feel I've got the most beautiful clients. These are women who, in some cases, have not had sex or even intimacy for 10 plus years.
Wow.
In some cases, they've not had a man hold their hand.
Wow.
And in one case, a year ago, there was a beautiful client who was 55 years old and a virgin.
Wow.
Yeah.
That breaks my heart.
Look, for me, it both breaks my heart, but makes me feel really grateful that she chose me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was extraordinary. It was such a beautiful, I was nervous because I felt such a responsibility to make this incredible moment for her so profound.
Mm.
And it was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
amazing.
These are things that most people don't realize about what sex workers can do. And look, as a mature straight male escort in my 50s, I'm bucking the trend. People really don't understand what it is that I bring to people. And this is, to your question, what I provide is something really magnificent and beautiful. That women from their 40s to their 80s, they still have desire and they still have a craving for affection. And that can be honestly as simple as holding a hand or having a dinner date with a man like me and just feeling that they're listened to, they're heard. And it's not just about sex. Sex is far down the list in terms of their priorities. And that is the most magnificent thing that I bring to the clientele that I see. And it most people would not understand, but it really transforms the lives of these beautiful women that I see. It I can see that they've changed in those couple of hours that we've been together. That
Wow.
they feel like they are glowing, they're walking taller, and that is profound. And the testimonials that they write for me just absolutely demonstrate that that is a true thing that they experience.
How beautiful. Gosh, that got me right in the feels. That got me glowing. I'm just so happy for you that you found your calling, regardless of whatever age you found it now. And I'm also just so happy for your clientele and the transformation and the beauty and the connection and the aha moments. That's kind of what I'm hearing from what you're sharing, like opening their minds to who they are and how beautiful they are and what they and their bodies possibly are capable of. Wow. That's
Can I give you
incredible.
another example here?
Yes.
So I've got an amazing client, and she's quite old. Um, she's older than 70, let's just say.
Okay.
And she has she's lived an amazing life, and she's been my longest standing client. So I've seen her for about 2 years. She has the most incredible sex drive of any woman I have ever met.
Wow.
And that's not the reason I'm telling this story. But the thing is that she is absolutely delightful. We have such a gorgeous connection. We might meet up once a month,
Mhm.
say, but she also has an incredible sex drive. And I think that is a terrific example with that, regardless of menopause or whatever your women's journeys, they can be very different. And this woman has just sparkled my entire life. And it's
Wow.
like, wow, she's such a testimony to the fact that women can really continue on their energetic journey
Mhm.
to whatever
Oh,
age they are. And it's
so
just really
beautiful.
heartwarming.
That is really heartwarming. I'm actually really delighted that you added that anecdote. That's so beautiful. And being somebody who is postmenopausal, I did have to deal with the hormonal changes and my libido crashed and I had to work with my OBGYN to figure out how to get my hormones back at a place where my libido came back up again. And it is a journey and that's important to me, and but everyone has to go on their own journey. And my hope for me is, I want to have a thriving sex life into my 90s. I like to joke around. I want to be a ninja in my 90s from one of my mentors. And why not? Like, why not have that as a goal? And like you said, even just holding hands or connecting, like whatever feels good to you, it's okay. So I love that you're able to help create that experience and just remind all of us that our sex life doesn't, it's whatever we lean in and maybe nurture, as we get older and we still have desires. Just because we're older doesn't mean some of those desires just vanish or go away unless we choose to. I mean, that's okay too, right?
Kitty, can I
Yeah.
tell you another quick story?
Of
Um,
course.
so the very first client that I saw, which was a couple of years ago, she was in her 50s. She had not had any intimacy for 12 years. And on our second date, she said to me, George, can you hold my hand? And she hadn't had anyone hold her hand for 12 years. And that was both sad and beautiful. And I was like, of course, I'll do that. And anyway, she saw me for about a year. And fast forward to now, she's 65 and she's now an escort herself.
Wow. So you inspired her.
I did, yeah. And we are like dear friends. And it just, look, that's an unusual story. But I guess it sort of, is in summary, it goes to show that by triggering, by enlightening something, you never know where that's going to go.
Mm. Who
And
knows?
it
Maybe I could have a
doesn't mean it
third
needs to
career.
go
You never
there.
know.
Indeed,
No, but that's
indeed.
really inspiring. I mean, especially just that you inspired her to change careers, that she was, I think you said in her 60s. And after the dry spell of 12 years, she was just like, wow, this is what I want to be doing with my life. Like, that's incredible. What an amazing talk about a personal transformation. Just a beautiful story. So I appreciate all the different stories that you shared here, just to also normalize the conversation around sex work and also the beauty and the service that you and other folks in your line of work are offering people. That's incredible. Yeah. So with that, I think I'll ask just kind of a $1 million question that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering that might be helpful is how do you handle being, practicing safer sex and getting tested for STIs? Like what are your practices? Because a lot of people I'm sure might be wondering that.
Yeah, they do. And I've got three statements. First up, I had a vasectomy a very long time ago, so I'm not going to produce babies anymore. I get tested very often, and I use condoms.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
look, we all take a chance. Look, we all like if we're going to kiss someone, there's a chance of something happening. If we are going to do oral sex, a chance of something happening. And look, if we drive a car, there's a chance we might, have a crash.
Hmm.
So we choose every day. What are we going to do? But no, this is my job. So I'm not going to risk my job by potentially catching an STI. But there is always a risk. We can't mitigate that unless if you don't have sex, you won't catch an STI. But if you want sex, there's always a risk.
Right.
So yeah,
Well
yeah.
said. Well said. Very, very plain and simple. And I couldn't agree more, but I love hearing it from you, given this is your line of work. So, and when you say you get tested often, I know it's not a science, but just for our listeners, just to help them understand and maybe think about it both from being a sex worker perspective, but even in their lives, so they could have a comparison. Like for me, my goal is about twice a year, but it also depends on what's going on with my sex life at the time.
Yeah, so for me, it's roughly every 3 months. Or if there's look, and I've not experienced something where I'm suggesting that I've got something. But if I were to have a bit of a doubt, I'd go to the GP straight away.
Okay.
But yeah, usually every 3 months, and just to be sure. And as the Irish say, what do you wear? Two condoms to be sure. To be sure. Um, but no, it's this is my work, and I put great emphasis on being safe, and there is no guarantee, and it's safer sex. That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, just I can't thank you enough for everything that you've shared so far. For my final kind of question here, I'd love to just ask, is there any question I didn't ask you that you'd like to answer or any message you would like to leave our listeners with?
Look, the message I want to leave listeners with is that sex work is real work,
Hmm.
and it's always been stigmatized. People look down on sex workers, and sure it's the oldest profession, but like anything, it's supply and demand. And I, as a white man, have privilege just because I'm a white man. And as a male escort, I'm often considered like, the gigolo and whatever, where women or people of other genders are looked down upon as being, insert, terrible
Mm,
names there. And fundamentally, what we're doing is really important, and we can make relationships better, or we can actually just feel like in many ways, but like a social worker. So don't dismiss the value of what we provide, because if there was not a market for it, we wouldn't be there. And yeah, I want to help people to appreciate that this is a service. Please don't stigmatize what we do. because it's so important, and it can save relationships. It can make people feel incredible about themselves. And I know this from my own experience, that the clients that I see end up feeling incredible and empowered. So please
Wow.
treat it in the way it should be treated.
Wow, George, that got me right in the feels. And it's just been such a delightful, heartwarming, sincere conversation with you. I'm so glad you reached out and we had this beautiful discussion. I think it's going to help a lot of people. I can feel your heart in your work. And I'm really just glad to get to know you. And I hope this isn't the last time that we talk. So I just want to thank you again for reaching out, for taking the time, especially later in your evening where you are over in Australia, to have a chat with me here and create an incredibly beautiful episode for Loving Without Boundaries here. So where can people find you and your work, George?
Well, they can find me at georgegoulburn.com. and my Instagram, which is at George Goulburn Official.
Okay. I will be finding you on Instagram. Awesome. Beautiful. Well, thank you again, George. Really appreciate you taking the time to have this gorgeous conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you heard, are struggling with some aspect of your relationships, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit to work with me as your relationship coach, here's what I invite you to do next. Head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That's lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply, and book a call to speak with me. I'll get on the phone with you for about 45 minutes, and we'll get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, exactly what's not working well in your relationships right now. Number 2, ideally where you'd like to be and what might be getting in the way. And number 3, the exact strategy to get you there, helping to close that gap. Remember, creating healthy, open relationships does not typically happen by itself. Many often need expert guidance to make it happen. We've helped clients all over the world to feel safe, happy, and secure in open relationships while not losing their mind or their cherished partners. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. I'm Kitty Chambliss, and let's talk soon.